Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we are going to have a repeat guest on, and I love it when we have repeat guests because that means they have such great information that we love being able to chat with them again. And I just realized I have a wicked smart shirt from you that I should have worn. Oh my gosh. But please join me in welcoming Chris Prefontaine to our program again. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Deb. It's awesome to be here. And you shocked me when you said we haven't talked in 3+ years. So I'm glad to be here.
I know. April of 2019. And so this is going to be fun because there's clearly some little things that have happened in the world since then, especially pertaining to what you do. So let me read your bio and then we will dive into this.
Sounds like a plan. So
Chris Prefontaine is a 3-time best-selling author of Real Estate on Your Terms, The New Rules of Real Estate Investing, and Moneeka Sawyer's Real Estate Investing for Women. He is the founder and CEO of Smart Real Estate Coach and host of the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast. So again, Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Great. Well, I always like knowing how my guests got to where they are today. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'll go backwards and we can go back and peel back the layers if you want. But I've been at this now, Deb, going on 31 years this September.
Wow.
Talk about dating myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I've touched the building area, building new homes. I've touched owning a brokerage. I've done all that. But that led, I don't know if you remember, that led me up to the pre-2008 crash.
Right.
And then because of the crash, we've kind of designed everything that we do today, literally. So I'm thankful for that now, but you couldn't have convinced me of that back then. Mm-hmm. If you fast forward, even since 19, because you really made me think when you said that just a few minutes ago, so much has changed market-wise to cause us to kind of push through and get creative, but also a lot of our systems and things that we do have been trademarked and solidified. So you and I can peel back any layer of that journey, certainly, but that's kind of the update.
Cool. And when I was re-reviewing your information, I had forgotten that yours is truly a family business. And I love that because it is, you're bringing the next generation along and maybe even the next generation after that, because I know that you are a grandfather.
Indeed. Yeah, they actually attend the events usually at the end to close the events out. So I've got a 2.5 and a 4.5-year-old. Yeah, my son, Nick, works with us. My son-in-law, Zach, works with us. They're both partners in the business. When I say works with us, I should define that. We buy and sell properties the way we teach that we buy and sell properties, but we do it ourselves too in the New England area. And so we all work that business. And then we go out and we teach the exact same thing to our students all across North America. So I think that's cool because you get to stay on the cusp with your finger on the pulse. As you know, things change so fast. Right. Even putting COVID aside, things change so fast. So being in the trenches is super important.
Now, do you deal with residential properties or commercial or both?
Okay, the short answer is both, but let me define it. So for clarity. So I think in real estate, there's so many shiny objects that people can get distracted with. So when we teach, especially a brand new person, we're teaching single families. Okay. But as you know, oh gosh, I read the book recently that, what's his name? Anderson Cooper wrote about his family, the Vanderbilts. In that book, they talked about terms deals, owner financing, lease purchase being done in the 1600s in New York City before banking. So this is not, I say that
this is not new.
No. So I say that to say, yes, I teach single families, but in your journey, whether you're with us or by yourself, you're going to run into the multis, you're going to run into the commercial. I'm not at my building today, but I don't know if I was when I spoke with you in 19, but we bought that building on owner financing. We still own it to this day and never touched a bank. So yes, you can do it with all different types of properties. You can do it with boats and cars, obviously. It's just creative financing.
Right. You know, and obviously the pandemic just threw everything into an uproar. You know, but the amazing thing is we are still seeing housing prices just unbelievable, you know, and almost double, I think, in some cases, what they were just several years ago. You know, people always ask me, you know, we're going to retire in several years and have absolutely no intention of staying in Atlanta. Sorry, Atlanta. But they say, you know, are we going back to Colorado? We can't afford to. I mean, you know, it's just one of those things. And I looked it up. You know, we sold our house in 2012 for $220,000. And when I looked it up on Zillow or, you know, one of those, they were listing it at $495.
Believe it.
And, you know, it's like, okay, they didn't make, you know, I know they, you know, recarpeted and, you know, did some things like that, but they didn't make that big a difference. And I think for many people, we just don't understand what the heck is going on. And so kind of explain that to us. Why is the market just, because it's obviously great if you're selling. If you're buying, it's like, oi. You know?
Yeah.
So what is it that the market just skyrocketed like this?
I mean, I don't, that's not my area of expertise. I think the billionaires don't know, but I will give you my humble opinion. I think, well, I don't think, I know it started for us around March of 20 for what I'm going to say next. And that is, there's a bit of a frenzy to either move to the country more, you know, or get rid of a second home. The COVID caused a lot of crazy things. It caused at the exact same time in our business, it caused in the real estate market, it caused some people to shut down, literally close the doors. I can't buy ever, I don't know what to do. And it caused others to what I call double down and aggressively do more. So we acquired a lot more properties that month than we ever did in those 2 months. What continued it? Again, the supply. The supply is just not there. But because of what you just said, couple that with the interest rates that just went up, almost double in 120 days. That has caused a lot, not just what you said about Colorado, but a lot of buyers to be pushed to the sidelines, sadly. And so I love that, frankly, not that they get pushed to the sidelines, but that we can help them. Right. And the seller's demand is going to come down. So we are seeing it soften. And because I have the luxury of having our community be kind of like a microcosm of society. So I get to hear about the different pockets of the market. Not everywhere. It's still screaming hot in some places, but all of my students are saying, yeah, my conversations are changing, Chris. So I know the market's changing, not fast, but it's changing a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. It's like, okay, can we sell our house now and get those really high prices? And then, you know, like, you know, in a couple years, buy when things have dropped. Because it's, you know, I've heard people who've said, oh my gosh, yeah, we sold because, you know, somebody called us on the phone, somebody knocked on our door and said, we're going to give you a cash price, you know, yada, yada, yada. And then which they thought, hey, this is great. But then of course they were stuck when they went to buy something else. Yeah.
My son-in-law, Zach, and my daughter, Kayla, recently moved from Rhode Island to Mass. When they started the process in Rhode Island, they said, oh, great. This is higher than we ever thought we'd get. But by the time they moved to Mass, the rate locks went from what they could even get their hands on, 3.25 to about, what they end up locking into 5 1/8 or something like that. Like, this is like just in the search process.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a little crazy what went on. And of course, to your point, they had to make sure they put full price offers in and you couldn't even toy around. I tell sellers, your ideal situation is, sell now if you can go find something to rent, but that can even get hard. Because the rental prices have gone up. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, because it comes back to supply and demand. I mean, there's just not things out there. And you know, I think, unfortunately, we're continuing to see that because of, you know, the fact that you know, builders aren't able to get supplies to be building things. And then if they, you know, even if they can get the raw materials, they're having trouble getting workers. And so it is just, it's, you know, especially if you want a new home, that's just, you know, really tightening up and getting very difficult.
Yeah, I'm building a home, my wife and I right now, on sort of our 30-year dream location with mountain range views and everything. And the builder said to us, He's been building for a lot of years, like probably same as me, 30 years in the biz.
Mhm.
He was just giving me one example, but a single sheet
Mhm.
of the particular plywood he was talking about went from like $7 to 40 something dollars in the course of the last 3 years. Well, that's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Right.
So yeah, things have changed.
Well, and other things too. I was talking to a friend of mine who is moving, and he is having a house built. And they actually, they weren't having trouble with the supplies for the home. They couldn't get appliances.
Yeah.
And and so it was like, okay, do we get some that might not, maybe it's not all stainless or all one color, just because we got to get these. And so it's become a very complicated time to be in this. But you buy properties, you're not buying the properties to live in them. You're buying the properties to then turn around and resell them, correct?
Yeah, all of our properties we buy, as I alluded to earlier, on terms, owner
Mhm.
financing, lease purchase, and sub two existing mortgages.
Mhm.
And all of them, 99% of them, we're buying to install that buyer who needs time,
Mhm.
maybe because of interest rates went up, maybe because of COVID, credit, et cetera. And we help get them to the finish line by way of getting them mortgage ready. Super healthy relationship that we have with them. All of them do that. We're not living in the properties, and we get asked that once in a while, calling sellers, even as a family, are you going to be living in my home? And frankly, I don't think it matters if I'm buying their home, but
Right.
we do get asked once in a
Mhm.
while.
Yeah, I mean, there are times, and it's funny because I've seen it happen when there've been bidding wars where, people are like, I like them better. I'm going to sell to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, you're not buying it to move into it. And so, it's interesting. And the amazing thing is your business has continued to increase. Did you find, I mean, like you mentioned that, when COVID first hit, there was, you did really well, but then did things contract, or have they just continued to really be pretty smooth?
Yeah, no, they come back down. So here's what it did. It went up. I'll give you the metrics. I
Mhm.
looked at recently. So not last, April 20,
Mhm.
we put under contract in our community about 21 properties. The
Wow.
average at that time was hovering around 8 to 10
Mhm.
ish. So that was a major spike. And then it came right back down within a month or two.
Mhm.
And when I say it came right back down, it just got to the point, Deb, where, and still it's just changing now, but it's still a little
Mhm.
bit more difficult, meaning we have to speak to more sellers to
Mhm.
get the same deal. It just
Right.
because they're either selling quickly
Mhm.
or already sold before you even
Mhm.
got to them. So whereas back pre-COVID, it would take me around, let's just give you round numbers, 40 sellers I'd speak to.
Mhm.
I'd get that under contract, I'd have it sold, and those are my metrics.
Mhm.
It's probably 60 now.
Mhm.
And for some people that are less experienced, it might be 80.
Right.
And those numbers are starting to finally come down. But that was the peak of, wow, I got to talk to more people to get that deal
Mhm.
done. That's all.
Right. And I think, it's exactly what you said, with this, especially when COVID really, people went, ugh. And more importantly, when they went, wow, I can work wherever I want to work,
Yeah.
depending on, who they were working for. And because when remote work really caught on and people really did realize, hey, this is okay.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's where so many people went, I want to live in downtown. Oh, I want to live by a lake, all of those various things. And, all of a sudden they were starting to make those switches that they might not have made for maybe until they retired.
Yeah. So two things I saw with that you just said, good points. One is we have a student in Colorado, coincidentally to what you said earlier, Chad, and Chad had this home that was off the grid, like literally no electricity or nothing. And it was difficult for him to sell. He put under agreement with a contingency to put a buyer in it, which is what we do for protection. He just couldn't pop it. Well, when COVID happened, he had people flying in to see it the second
Oh,
they
yeah.
could fly in with COVID. It was crazy. The other thing we're seeing, depending on what stat you look at, it's a big number either way. There's a major influx because of what you said for people leaving their W-2 and finally starting their own business. And
Right.
because of that, even if they have great credit and a great down payment, they typically need 2 years of seasoning. For if you're for the listener, that's just 2 years of time that banks require because you now
Right.
have a
They
new
want to make
endeavor.
sure you're not a bad credit risk.
Yep. And so now that's another great buyer pool for us to help in every market we're in. Because it's good for them. They're going to go start their own business, but now they need our ramp. They need our 2-year ramp to get seasoning and get mortgage ready.
Right. So let's talk about the nitty-gritty details. So if you buy a home, then what happens? Are you buying it from the people who are then maybe going to lease it back from you? Or what is this process?
Yeah, so we don't do that piece there. We get asked to do where, oh yeah, you can buy my home and I want to stay for a while. I remember
It gets
around the
tricky.
crash. It does, and I remember right around the crash. You may remember this. There were investors in all markets that were sort of preying on sellers that were in trouble, buying their home and having them lease back, but then they couldn't make the payments,
Right.
and they were ending up in court. And the judges really frowned upon it, and morally and ethically, it's an issue too, I think. But it made investors look bad because they were kicking people out of their homes
Right.
technically.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is in a lease purchase, we're putting their home under agreement. A deed doesn't transfer. It's a whopping deposit that we have built into our agreements of $10, literally. That's how we do them. And then when our buyer is mortgage ready, then we cash out the seller's mortgage if there's any equity, and of course our profit. That's a lease purchase. With a owner financing deal, we hone in on free and clear properties. So around a third of the properties in the United States are free and clear, no mortgage. And I love talking to them because a lot of them are off market. You're not getting into this frenzy like you said earlier.
Yeah, they're not. They've not even thought about selling or moving.
No, and frankly, a lot of them don't know they can get a premium the way we do it. As long as I get my term, because we do principal only pay down every month. We don't pay interest usually. So the deed transfer is there, and they're the bank technically. So, and then in all these, the way we buy, all of them put that tenant buyer that needs time to buy. That's how we do them. And then the sub 2 houses, subject to the existing financing, of course, the loan stays in the seller's name. But that's usually the opposite of a free and clear. Free and clear is in good shape. They're debt free.
Right.
Whereas a sub 2 usually says sort of, I'm saying a bit facetiously, but they sort of say, look, I need a Band-Aid. Take my house, as long as you can make the payment. So it's a different makeup, totally different. One's in trouble and one's very happy, which wants to maximize their return. In all those scenarios, we're putting a buyer in that home that needs time to qualify. And we do not put them in the home until such time my son Nick has brought them through the pre-qualifying to prove that they can, in fact, down the road afford that. That's critical.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, the worst thing would be to get down that road and discover, oops, this is not going to happen.
Right.
And like you said, you're kicking people out of their homes. And I mean, that's just not fun. And of course your goal is that they get that home, that they're there for, however many years, and it is their home. Not just, hey, we're just here for 2 years and then poof.
Right. And we try to, this is a good point you brought up again, because we try to take if we own the property long-term, if it's a sub 2 with no ending or a nice long-term on owner financing, which we're trying to do more of in this market for safety. If it's one of those, we can say to the tenant buyer, hey, you've done a great job, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant Buyer. You paid your payments on time, your down payments up to date. So now instead of you going to a bank and paying all kinds of fees and going through underwriting, good news, we'll owner finance you. And that's like a gift because they don't have to go deal with the mess in the banks. It's just, as you know, can be grueling and getting tougher.
Right. Did you find during COVID that there were people defaulting? We hear about that a lot, where people could not make their payments, and it was interesting when all of this was happening and people were saying, okay, well, we're going to put a freeze. You don't have to pay, and it was like, no, you still have to pay. You just don't have to pay now. And so did you find that you had a lot of defaults, or were people still able to really be able to come out okay?
Believe it or not, we only had a few that we experienced during COVID. When it's happening is right now, actually. There are when
they just kind of struggled along, and now it's like, uh-oh.
Well, they kick the can down the street with these forbearances. We have a deal right now. I like to give live examples. We have a deal right now in New Hampshire, not far from our office here. And it happens to be the student, not ours, even though it's in our market. And the gentleman has this is a perfect example of what's going on now. He's got about 250 grand equity in the home because of the last 9 years run up. But he had a forbearance agreement that now has to stop being paid on. It's about 65 additional grand that got tacked on.
Wow.
In addition to that, his escrow is upside down. So here's a gentleman that if we don't do something with him creatively, he's going to lose that 9 years of appreciation and equity accumulation, sadly. And those, Deb, are rampant right now. We're getting calls from people that said, yeah, you called me or you mailed me a while ago. I need help. So it's a sad thing, but for us, it's okay. They're screaming, we need a guide. Like from a consumer standpoint, they need a guide. And once you understand how to do creative real estate, you can capitalize on that in a positive way. It's a win-win.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're not taking advantage of them. I mean, that's the important thing. And it's interesting because we're seeing businesses have the same thing happen. They've been able to limp along for 2 years, and get the loans, all of those various things. But then it's exactly what you said. They were kicking the can. And so they might not have even been limping. They might have been doing really pretty well when they had assistance, when they had, all sorts of things. But now that things are back to normal, I always laugh when I'm like, no, there's no such thing as normal.
Never.
But yeah, and so I've had several guests on who have said we're gonna have record numbers of businesses failing. Whether it could be some of the big guys that we just didn't even know were having issues, but a lot of the smaller guys, even the things like restaurants and the one type of business where they really were able to just kind of make it along for 2 years, and then it's like, it's not going to happen.
Well, just like homeowners kicked it down the street, the can down the street with forbearance, business owners, not knowingly maybe, but they did it with the crazy loans that the government was giving. And so now that's kind of ended, they've gone through that or whatever. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with you.
Right. Well, and people have changed in what they're doing. I think we've all gotten, very used to ordering online. So, we did a lot before, but now it's like, but more importantly, like restaurants and things like that. Those are the ones that I think are really going to be struggling, because if they didn't fully embrace things like delivery, takeout, all of those, because I think we really did all go, ooh, this is nice. I can sit here in my jammies and, and order my dinner and still be watching my favorite TV program. I'm not having to get the kids ready to go out and about, and I mean, we do we've backed off a little bit, but we used to have food delivered probably at least once a week, just because I didn't want to cook, but, it was great food from our favorite restaurants. And I don't see us changing and going back into the restaurants, because we got spoiled with going, ooh, this is pretty nice.
Yeah, you nailed something there, because just like in my business, there were people in my exact same business that closed their doors that when I'm screaming to my community, double down, this is the best time. Just like that, restaurants, like literally, I remember reading articles, one would shut down, and then the very same community, one would get super creative and take advantage, like you said, of some creative piece of the delivery or something, or serve businesses, whatever it might be, and thrive. So it's mindset as usual that when you come through these things.
Well, and a big part of it is, did you have a plan in place? And obviously nobody could plan for a pandemic. That was just not going to happen. And we certainly did not know it was going to last as long as it did and is. Because I think it is hopefully at some point going into the endemic mode, and it's just going to always be with it. But yeah, it's businesses that hadn't thought, what would we do if, I think they're the ones that are really struggling or have completely gone under.
Yeah, or delusional to the, okay, I got this chunk of money as my Band-Aid, again, kicking the can down the street. I know that affected people who weren't used to dealing with, curveballs, but here's another point to that. So I've been screaming about this for years, way prior to being on your show in 19, and that is the changes in there's one constant about real estate. It's going to keep changing. Right. So it's not, I got to wait. People are screaming in March of 20, no, it's COVID, we can't do real estate. March of 21, no, it's too busy, we can't do real estate, it's too hectic. 22, the market's going to crash. No. So it's going to constantly change. So what would it not behoove you to be with a community, a friend, a mentor, someone that has been through a bunch of cycles? Yes, that's the key. So you learn how to bop and weave in the cycles, not be crippled.
Right. And that is obviously what you do. You teach people. You are that mentor. You are that teacher. You teach people how to do this. And I'm guessing one of the first questions that people say is, oh my gosh, Chris, doesn't this cost a whole bunch of money to be able to go into this. So what do you tell folks?
Well, this depends on how aggressive they want to get, quite frankly, because
if they want to buy 10 properties, well, that's probably going to take a chunk of money.
Actually, it wasn't even, yes, but I wasn't referring to just that. So I'll hit both.
Okay.
I was referring to first, and then we'll go there, that to educate yourself, I'm not so naive to think everyone, should do creative real estate. So whatever it is you're going to go, whatever niche, it's okay. But should you not get around, like I said earlier, someone with experience in that niche that also morally and ethically and value-wise you can relate to? I think that's key. There's people that have done well and they have no lifestyle with their kids and spouse. So that's key. And then commit to that for like 3 to 7 years so you can have success. Yeah, that's all important. Then once you learn that in whatever niche, in our niche, no, you don't need, I can teach people, I do teach people how to go out and do lease purchase deals. Like Brian in Chicago comes to mind. He's become a good friend, but he joined us, Deb, at the end of 19, like you and I met in 19, right before COVID, left his corporate job, did his first 8 deals, generating about 800 grand in profits the way we do it, but did them all with lease purchase. $10 a piece, $10. It's crazy story. And this, it's repetitive all through the community. So you don't need it. You don't need money to buy the properties. You frankly need money to educate yourself first.
Right. And I think that's the thing that people, obviously are, they don't understand is, they really do think they have to have all that money in the bank, and that they're just flat out buying the home, the business, the whatever it is, and then turning it around. And that's really not how real estate investing works.
Well, people so there's a lot of, with the HGTV and the other shows, right? People do see all that and they make it look super easy.
Oh, yes. And it only takes an hour.
Yeah, it's crazy. But they also, the profit margins, this is my opinion, and I don't want to, I have friends in all these businesses, so I'm not stepping on toes. But the flippers and the rehabbers, because I've done them, the margins are so thin now because of the cost that you said earlier, and because everybody's jumping in since the HGTV craze, that it's frankly is not even worth it. Number one, and number two, it's sort of what I call the old way of doing real estate, where you do a deal and you get paid. Okay, but that's, in my opinion, the old way. It took us time, Deborah, since I met you. We trademarked the 3 payday system where people get paid up front, like you would on a deal, paid over time, and then paid long term. So that's federally trademarked now, and that really puts a big explanation point on our system. And that's the new way, frankly, if you ask me, to do real estate.
Right. And you mentioned things like flippers. I know somebody who, he was in commercial real estate, which, took a big hit because companies either went out of business or really realized, okay, do we need 100,000 square feet when everybody's working from home? We still might need a little chunk, but we don't need this whole big space. And so then he went into flipping, and, it's horribly hard work, because it's just this constant churning of buy this property, fix it, flip it, buy this property, fix it, flip it. And then it goes back to what we were saying before. Can you get the appliances? Can you get the, and all of those various things. And I thought, wow, that's just, he's young, but it seems to me like that's an awful lot of work.
I think I agree. And I think it's a job, if you ask me. Now, I want to qualify this so people don't think I have an opinion, but with no experience. I've done hundreds of them. My wife, Kim, has done raise the roof projects on her own, where she takes a ranch, blows the roof off, and does a second, like we've done all these.
Because you guys enjoy doing that.
We play with that. That's and she recently took a ranch right up the street, and my parents were going to relocate here. They're in their 80s, and she totally rehabbed it from start to finish. It's an enjoyable one thing for her, but not to do that as a job. Because I hate to say it, but it's a job unless you know how to scale quite nicely with the team. It's a job when you're getting paid once.
Right. And it is this constant churning, because it's not like, especially if you're, a one person, you can't be working on multiple properties at the same time. You might be able to be working on a couple, just depending on what all you're doing. But it's just, and then you really are at the whims of, is it going to sell? Now, the nice thing is, the market is still doing pretty well. So more than likely it will, but it's, and I always, I laugh at the TV shows because, for one thing, they're done out in, where it's, they're flipping $1 million homes. And I'm like, okay.
Get stuck with one, and then you'll double think that.
Yeah, but I do always wonder, are they overshooting? What if because I mean, we see them every once in a while in the programs where they realize, oh, oops, the
Yeah.
whole foundation is bad or whatever. Because sometimes when they're buying the properties, they can't inspect, and all of those, but yeah, I mean, it just seems like an awful lot of work for what is conceivably a very small or even negative payday.
Yeah, it reminds me of my realtor days. For me, that would be like 95 to 2000 before I sold to Coldwell Banker. I felt like every year for those 5 years, I really felt like every year January would hit and I'd say, oh man, I got to do it again if I want that lifestyle. Because again, I got paid for that deal and it's done. Now, granted, there's referrals and all that good stuff, but generally speaking, that model is the old model.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your training that you do, because as you said, this isn't something that somebody should just leap into. Now they could probably do their own research and maybe kind of figure it out, but it is obviously better if you can learn from people who know what they're doing. As you said, they know what they're doing ethically. And so talk about what happens if somebody goes into a training program with you.
Yeah, so I'm big on, you said do your own research. I agree, because I'm big on free. Later on, you and I will give them some free resources, because I don't want people in any program, whether it's us or someone else, I don't want people doing it unless they research and say, this does fit for the reasons that I said earlier. So like on YouTube, they can look at about, I don't know what the number's up to now, but probably 150 of our deals. We just give them, like we whiteboard them. And some were challenging, some we made mistakes, and some were really good. We don't just give you the fluffy. So that's a good free resource. And once they do that and they say, or read the book, it's something that they got there for free. Once they do that, then they can decide if they want to go through our online academy. And here's what's key, Deb, because you and I have been at this for a bit. There are so many people that know how to market really well. So you get their course because they sold you. What I would rather see people do is get the course, have a link to us for the eternity, like be able to come to free weekly things. We do that free weekly. It's on Thursdays. So I'll be doing one today. So they get to come hang out with us for free until such time they are either doing deals on their own. Great, congratulations. Or, hey, Chris, I'd rather have this done aggressively. I like some of your coaching programs. Our coaching programs aren't consulting. Our coaching programs are more interactive. So if you get a lead as a student and you're brand new, you're calling me going, uh-oh, I got a lead. What do I do? Can you maybe call them for me, Chris? Like we'll get on the phone and talk to sellers and buyers, my son, myself, Zach, my son-in-law. That's how you learn interactively on the fly and you don't forget versus textbook, looks good, feels good, go out in the field. Uh-oh, I didn't know that would happen. So that's why we do it interactively. All our programs are that way. And we hope that in doing that, we're not only changing the landscape of the training, but we're also doing what I call bridging the gap. The time from when they see a course and they're new to I can do a deal. Sadly, some people never get out of the gap, but we're trying to bridge that as tight as we can.
Right. And of course, the important thing is, obviously you can't foresee every situation. But we also want to make sure that anybody who's deciding to do this, whether it's through your program, buying your book, totally on their own, whatever, that they have thought through things. I mean, this is not a hobby. It can be a side gig because, depends on what's going on. Maybe for a lot of people, it's a side gig that then turns into full time. But we want them to be educated about what it takes before you leap in.
Yeah, you said a side gig. I couldn't agree more, because if your goal when you come in to any program, to your point, if your goal is, I want to do 3 deals this year because I think that'll supplement my income, perfect, as long as we know that. If your goal is, I'm going to dip my toe in and try this, wrong avenue. Because you can't, what's going to happen is you'll try it. And if you don't have immediate success, which isn't reality.
Then you're like, well, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Next shiny object, next shiny object. And before you know it, you ran around in circles and you didn't do anything and you're frustrated and you're blaming yourself. It's not you. You need to stick with something for 3 years. Here, I'll actually give you a quick formula. So pick a niche. We already said that, that you can, number 2, pick someone that you can relate to, morally, ethically, values, that's been through cycles, at least 2 or 3, life and economic. And 3rd, stick with it for 3 to 7 years. That formula will win you, have you win every time in every niche.
And like you said, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, we're talking real estate investing here, but it's anything. And the quick, the get rich quick schemes That's hard to say. Those don't work,
Nope.
and the problem is you see a fluke every once in a while that does. And then everybody's like, "Ooh, we can do that too." But yeah, this takes time, folks, whether you're starting your own business, all of those various things. It is not, I'm going to, be able to buy a Lamborghini next week.
Yeah, you see those in the commercials, but I guarantee you they're rented.
I know. So cool. Yeah, I mentioned at the start, and for the people who are listening, you've got this great shirt on that says "Wicked Smart," and we're getting a little bit of your New England accent in there. But tell us a little bit more about why you call your programs Wicked Smart.
Yeah, it started out with Smart Real Estate Coach,
Mhm.
and then I don't know how far back, maybe back around 19-ish. Our now CMO, but he was our creative director then, started saying Wicked Smart because of New England, right? It was even on the Super Bowl a couple of years ago with the Patriots. So then we went and trademarked it. It was so much easier for people to remember. It was unique to us and to New England. And so now it's become the Wicked Smart group of companies. We have Wicked Smart Finance, where we finance student deals that do need money when they can't get that deal done without leaving money on the table. And then we have Wicked Smart Regular, which is doing business now as Smart Real Estate Coach, but it used to just be Smart Coach. So we stumbled upon it organically.
I love it. In your bio, I mentioned, one of the books that you have written is on real estate investing for women. How is that different? Is it because clearly, it's different because you wrote a book about it, but how and why is it different for women to do real estate investing?
Yeah, I'll pass the credit to that to Moneeka. She kind of queued that up. And her goal was to have predominantly female stories in it to empower women, and then reached out to just myself and Mark Willis, who's another. Coincidentally, we both knew him, and it wasn't planned. And so it was a pleasure to co-author with him as well. But we were the only two in there just to bring different perspective, because both of our communities were predominantly women. So I think that's why she picked us. But that was what she was doing, trying to empower, and she did a good job doing that.
And it's always interesting to see women doing something that is non-traditional, and because they do bring a totally different thought process to it.
Well, and much more talented with people, if you ask me. And this is a people business, right? This comes up all the time in our community. We'll say to someone, if it's a couple, we'll say to someone, hey, Steve, have your wife record that pre-recorded message and have that go to the homeowners, not you, or have her do this and this and this. So it's more effective.
Well, and let's be real, it's going to come down to getting the wife's opinion and blessing and approval to be doing this.
No matter what.
So
couldn't agree more.
Very cool. Let's tell me again about the 3 paydays. Let's go into more depth about that, because people are like, ooh, 3 paydays. How does that work?
Yeah. So I refer to it as the new way, and here's how it works. My issue was when we came back from the crash and kind of, I'll say, redefined how we're going to operate, right? Here's the box. Okay, what are we going to do? One of them was, let's not be on a treadmill, to what you and I were talking about earlier, for that one check deal. So what we designed is, when our buyers, who you and I talked about earlier, they're good, valid buyers that just need time. They're not renters with a long history of bad credit. So they come in with a down payment. Remember, now these are people that left a W-2, let's say, and they want to buy a home, and they go, oh no, I can't get qualified yet. I didn't know that. So they have a down payment. They're ready.
Right. So they've got their 20,000 or whatever.
They're ready. Yeah. So payday 1 is the down payment. It's non-refundable. They're a serious buyer. They put that into the agreement, and they're done. So if it's 20 or 30 or 40 or 100, then that's your payday 1. That's spendable. It doesn't go in escrow. We're not relatives.
Okay.
Payday number 2, it doesn't matter. Remember earlier conversation. If we have a lease purchase or an owner financing or a sub-2, whatever debt we're paying to the owner or to the bank, we're going to collect that plus some from the buyer as a monthly lease vehicle until they get their mortgage. Well, there's a spread there. There's a delta. That is not huge. It's $300 to $1,000 per month, but that's per property. And if you do the math, we carry as a family 50, 60 properties at any one time. That's a lot of.
So even at that small amount, that's a lot.
It's nice. Yeah. So, and you were talking about restaurants earlier, coincidentally, if you take this model, and I'll give you payday 3 in a second. If you take the model of money now, money steady over time, and money long term, that's sort of a great ideal business model for any business, restaurant or other. Payday 3 is really interesting. Payday 3 is the markup in the property price that we did day one, because this deal could have been 2, 5, 10 years ago. And more importantly, the big number is all of the principal pay down throughout the term of that deal accumulates to us, the buyer, just like you would if you're a homeowner. So that number gets pretty big, because remember I said earlier on the owner financing deals, they are usually principal only pay down. So you get to the end of a 3, 4, 5, 6-year deal, and you did all principal pay down. That is an enormous equity builder and recession hedge. I'll give you an example. We are closing a deal right now. This will get people thinking that we purchased way back in, I think it was 13 or 14. That was for $183,900. But it was done on owner financing, where the owner became the bank, and we paid him $923 principal per month. That's closing, and the profit on that, the net profit at the end on payday 3 is $188,000. Now we bought it for $183,000. Think about that. So it's because of the massive power of principal pay down and our trademark system of 3 paydays. So that was a long answer. I hope that was clear for people.
Well, but what it really made me think about was the fact that this is a complicated process. It goes back to what we were talking about. This is not something you just decide, oh, hey, this sounds fun. This is a complicated process, and obviously, you need to know what you're doing from a legal perspective. I mean, all of these things, and so that's where doing your research wherever you're doing it. And again, it's not, hey, let's see if this works. It's no, we've done the research. We want to do this. We know what it entails.
Yeah, I should have put some math to this to cap it off. So the 3 paydays average, I'll give you our family company average, and I'll give you the student average all across the country. Our family average is around $78,000 for all 3 paydays per deal. So they come in over time per deal. And the community average ranges from a low of $45,000. I know who that is. It's out in Arizona in a very low end area where she is.
Property values are lower.
Just the nature of percentages. Yep. And we have as high as $250,000 and up in areas like California, DC, New York. So that when you start talking about that and you say, wait a minute, to your point, instead of tinkering with this, I'll learn it. I'll acquire that skill set over time and the mindset that goes along with it. And then if I never talk to you again after, say, a year of learning or 2, you have that skill set for life to create those kind of paydays. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. You mentioned the R word, recession. And I think that's one of the things that's got people totally freaked out. We don't know what's going to happen. There's so many things going on. There's the 900th variation of COVID. There's monkeypox.
Yeah, really.
There's a war. There's supply demand issues. There's gas prices going wonkadoodle. So is this a recession-proof type of business?
I'll never say recession proof. I'm going to tweak the wording. That's a very good question. There are a bunch of people that tell you recession proof.
There's no guarantee in life, folks.
I don't think so in any of them. I really don't. So if someone's telling you that, you might want to do some research or run, either one.
I'd say run.
What I said earlier is recession resistant or a hedge against recession, either one of those. So I strongly believe that. I don't think anything's proof, because this curveball's evidence that I still do deals. And I still do deals because they always change and they're always intriguing. Well, that tells you that you could get a curveball you're not sure about. So I say resistant, not proof.
So, when you're looking at, say, the future, what are things that you're kind of thinking about? Which, I mean, let's put on the crystal ball. So, what do you kind of see things coming up?
Yeah, if you and I knew, we'd be on the beach somewhere. But
I would have bought the beach and
and we'd all be there having fun. So the answer is what we're doing in our to still hedge and stay profitable is with our students too, is we're teaching them how to do longer term deals.
Okay.
Like my building was a deal done in November of 18, and I did a 20-year deal with the owner. Now he's since passed away, but luckily he did this so his wife and his son would have that cash flow.
Right.
So here's why I say that. If I teach you how to do a deal that has a 10-year or more term, you shouldn't, I'm not going to ask you if you do, you shouldn't care too much about the cycles going up and
Right.
down like this,
Mhm.
because it doesn't matter,
Mhm.
especially if you have massive principal pay down through that. There's the head. So that's one thing. The second thing is a lease purchase, we control the property,
Mhm.
whereas a sub two and owner financing, we own the property.
Mhm.
There is a difference. There are accounting benefits, there are liability benefits, there are a lot of benefits. So we are teaching more of that. It tends to be a little bit more advanced. As I said to you earlier, Brian came in the community and he jumped on those leases right away because it was easy. Now he's looking back on, I probably should have kept some of those. And so now I'm teaching him a technique we call wealth stacking, where he can go back to the leases and now try to renegotiate and buy it.
Right.
So, but in hindsight, he would have done more of what we're saying, and that is try to buy it, either owner financing or sub two. Those are two major things that we're thinking.
Right. And obviously the longer term is going to have, it's going to have the ups and downs, but those kind of smooth out.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like people who, play the stock market. I worked with a guy one time that every day he bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold. And, basically gave himself an ulcer because he was trying to forecast all the time. And he's like, well, what did you do? And I said, I bought, I don't look at it. And because it would drive you nuts, especially when you've got things like what's going on now, because it goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. But if I look at, say, what it did over a year or 5 years or 10 years, I'm going to be happy. If I look at it from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I am going to give myself an ulcer.
I agree. It's just not my personality. I tinkered with that. I got some good training back in like 2000 after I sold my company to Coldwell Banker. And I found out it's just not my personality because it keeps you on the edge of the seat. You call it with the ulcer. It's just too stressful. Maybe some people, they love that rush. It's just not for me.
Yeah. I was just thinking, there are people who are risk adverse and, and then there are people who love it, and those are the people who probably, really heavily invested in crypto and might now be going, ooh, Or, I remember it long ago, I bought, like 30 years ago, tech stocks, and that was really when tech stock was, and there wasn't a lot. You bought Apple, you bought IBM. And I thought, wow, cool. These have got like a 30%, return, all this stuff. Get married. And my husband goes, no. And so we had a little bit of those, but then we spread it out because they were not going to continue earning 30%. That's just, it's not going to happen.
Not reality.
So what are some other tips that you have for folks? We've got about 10 minutes left.
I gave the 3-step formula so that you can go enter any business. That's key. Let me say something that I think people tend to say, that's fluffy, or that's not true. And that is, we have what we call the genius model, and that's 3 pillars, just to give a visual. It's skill set. Okay, we talked a lot about that today. That's courses and training. It's systems. Okay, we'll teach you how to automate and get a life around it. But then the third piece, which in my opinion is super important, I'm going to mention someone I know who talked to me about this on my show, Mr. Brian Tracy. And I said to him on my show, mindset. How much do you think that plays in? I ask a lot of guests that. And he said, it's most of it's 90-something%, because one reason is probably 100. One reason is we all go through these trainings, and then life happens out there when you try to do these deals, and they constantly curveball. Well, the mindset plays an enormous piece. If I knew then what I know now with respect to mindset in the 08 crash, I wouldn't have taken 4 years to get back in the market because I beat on myself like it was my fault. So the mindset piece is huge. So that's another tidbit. I don't care what business you're in, get around people that are in the right space mindset wise, but also get a coach. Who can we bring in coaches for that. That's not my specialty. I can help with it, but we bring in coaches to the community because we know that's such a big piece.
Right. Yeah. It is that believing in yourself. It's, knowing that you know what you're doing. And if you don't, knowing you can get help. And I think that's one of the things when I talk with, especially people starting their own business, they think they have to know it all. And it's an issue if they have to ask for help, and I tell people, if you're a business person, you should have an accountant, you should have a business attorney, even if it's just to do, little bitsy piecey things.
Yeah.
But, we have all of those other things, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, okay, I need to have a coach. I need to have I need to have somebody who's doing my accounting, my marketing, all of those various things, because then that frees you up to do what it is that you wanted to get in that business to do.
I agree 100%. I just interviewed my CPA on my show because he's going to be a speaker at one of the events, and I just kind of prodded him a little bit and asked what he sees for mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are people don't come to me soon enough, or people think they have it handled, or people are trying to run their real estate business and I got to write check. That's crazy. Do what you do best and find the people to help you with the rest.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned automating. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're automating. There's a lot of things you can be automating just to save time. Today, as we're recording this, it happens to be the end of the month. And my little invoices went merrily off to people all by themselves. I had it automated. I got the emails today and I went, oh yeah, today is the last day of the month. Because partially I don't like doing that. That's just kind of one of those bookkeeping things I don't like to do. And so to automate it, it meant that I didn't forget it. Because I had done that before. When the client calls and says, are you going to invoice me? That's a problem.
Yeah, right.
But when you can automate, and I'm assuming that for a lot of things that you do, there's quite a bit of automation because it's repetitive tasks. And if there are things that are repetitive, that's where you can automate.
Yeah, from the property side of things, from the running the business side of things, and from the coaching side of things, that all needs its own sort of set of automation.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's where you find the people or the processes that are going to do that for you.
Absolutely.
So, we've talked about your books. Go ahead and show them. You have to be Vanna White here.
Yeah.
So, we've got the real estate on your terms and the new rules of real estate investing. That show has got to go on forever because people aren't going to know who Vanna is at some point.
Yeah, right.
But great sources of information, and so I love that. But tell us, let's be real specific now. If somebody, what are the services that you provide, and then how do people connect with you?
Sure, I'll give the general website first, because if all fails, you'll find your way. But it's just smartrealestatecoach.com.
Mm-hmm.
I promised that earlier we'd give a link just to your tribe, because I'm now on your show for the second time, and I super appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
If they go to wickedsmartbooks.com /business power, they will get both of these books. And then I'll give you a hint. You'll probably get some goodies in there too. But these are hard copy, hardcover. And this is not, Deb, the type that, okay, get my free book. You go to fill out the information, put your credit card in for $8 in shipping. No shipping, no nothing. You will get this free. We spend the money. It's about a $40 package, frankly, by the time we're done. And we're going to give it to you if you're listening to the show.
Right. And we do have that link that we're putting in the show notes.
Sweet. There's another free resource I'll drop, because if you don't mind listening to, as you said, the New England accent again for an hour, we have what I call a master's class. It's free again. So you can say, I see how this works, A through Z. You just go to smartrealestatecoach.com /master's class and enjoy it. And then you decide where you want to go from there. We're happy to help.
Right. And you mentioned the fact that you've got a lot of resources on your website.
Yeah, the website's loaded, and then every single person listening is welcome always, everybody in our database, and you'll get notified once you get the book. But every Thursday from 4 to 4:50 Eastern time, we have what's called a Wicked Smart Sit Down, where students bring deals, students bring questions. It could be about anything, not just a deal. You can listen, be a fly on the wall. You can bring questions. You can just check us out, see how we are as a family, whatever you want. It's free.
Right. I love that. And it's all about providing that value to folks. And that's the important thing.
Absolutely.
So, and then you've got in-person. I'm assuming you've gone back to in-person. Do you do in-person trainings now?
Well, I'm so excited to answer this one. So 19 was the last ballroom QLS live event we did, and we started them in 16 with 14 people in the basement, right? It grew to the ballroom, and then we had to go virtual. And I loved it at first, Deb, because I wasn't traveling. And then the virtual fatigue and the Zoom fatigue,
right,
it has just been awful. So we are live this September for QLS Live. And thank you for asking that. So that's QLSlive.com. We're going to be in the ballroom. We're going to have some amazing people there. I would love every single person to come meet the family, but you can check it out at QLSlive.com.
I love it. And you're right. We can do this, over Zoom, all of those various things. But when you're in person, first of all, you feed on that energy. Yep. And more importantly, you are able to connect with the people at your table, the people in the hallway. I talked to somebody one time, they said they never actually attended any seminars. And I forget what it was that they had gone to. They said every connection they made was out in the hall. They just, they just hung out in the hall and just kept talking to people up and down the hall.
Invaluable. I was screaming about that yesterday. I had 4 of our coaches on a Zoom meeting like this. And I said, hey, you guys have been to the live events and you've been to the Zoom ones. Tell people what. And they all said, you can't even put it in words. The conversations, the relationships, the deals, the future conversations, the coach. It's crazy good with that way. So I'm psyched to be back. And that's this September.
Right. Yeah, it's great when we can do virtual because we can have, people from around the world. But yeah, I mean, that in person, there is just nothing that beats that.
I agree.
Well, oh my gosh, Chris, we are almost at the top of the hour and this has been so much fun. Again, your website where everything can be found, all those good things is smartrealestatecoach.com. And, we will have the link to the books in the show notes. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
You and I hit like all the sort of nuggets and coaching pieces. I just want to hopefully empower a few individuals or maybe all the listeners with the fact that you can do it, that you can leave the W-2 if that's you. That's a major piece of who we work with and really create a life of your dreams, especially with this mobility and the virtual nature of everything. So don't feel stuck. Don't feel like you have to leave your family. Don't. You can do it. Whether it's with me or someone else, you can do it.
I love it. So much fun. And, I don't think we should wait 3 years. We'll have to do this again because it's interesting to see how things evolve. And as we mentioned, we're coming out of the pandemic. So there's a whole bunch of weird shifts that are going on. So we will definitely have to have you on again.
Thank you so much, Deb. I appreciate it. Have a super, super holiday and be safe.
Great. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a wonderful chat with Chris Prefontaine. Until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.